Hey everybody, it's Steve. How you doing? This is the Still Working It Out channel because I'm still working it out. 57 years old and I don't know what I want to be when I grow up still. Had a plan. I think I had a plan from the time that I was 8 years old, and some things got in the way. So, yeah, still don't know what I want to be, I guess. I've tried a zillion things, none of them fit. It's kind of like one of those 2,000 piece puzzles. And could you imagine at the very end, the whole piece, the whole puzzle seems like it's together, and the one piece you have left doesn't fit in the hole. Yeah, life is not that easy that way sometimes. It doesn't always make logical sense. And it's called Still Working It Out, Life on the Road. And life on the road is because my whole life has been basically uh, a series of massive changes forever and ever and ever. Um, I had I say this, I've said this a lot of times, but we used to move like gypsy people. I had four kindergartens in that span when people are supposed to have just one, you know. And that's the only reason I use that as an example, is that my whole life's been that way, really. You know, we get into the habit of doing what we're used to, and in addition, probably because I haven't set myself up really well over time, or I've, you know, probably ADHD, probably a lot of things, but I have put myself in precarious positions for a long time, and life has a way of kicking you in the teeth once in a while, and some people never recover from stuff like that. The horrible kinds of things that you know you don't even want to talk about because frankly they're painful, and I've had several of those in my lifetime where I've had to kind of restart, remake myself, reinvent myself. And I remember when I was a kid, I was such a troublemaker at school and stuff like that. We moved to other schools, other places where I went to different schools. And when I got to my high school, which was the last physical, well, I shouldn't say that. It's one of the last physical schools I went to before college. Anyway, the last physical school I went to before college. And my father told me, "This is your chance to reinvent yourself." And I'm like, that like set the theme for the rest of my life. I've reinvented myself so many times. Um, it's hard to imagine. It's like for some people that have done everything right, and I'm not one of those, but some people have done everything right and lined themselves up, and they had a job they think they would, and they really earned it. They've got the credentials, and they've lined it all up, and then they somehow lost that job. Either the job was made obsolete, or um, some business decision somewhere far, far away just took the job away from them. And then they're like, "Oh my God, what now?" It's kind of like, I've only ever done this one thing. Now, for me, that's a whole nother lifetime, somebody else's lifetime. I've done everything. I've written out all my jobs before, and it looked like a roadmap of the eastern part of our country. Very, very complex. Because over time, I've always had two or three jobs at the same time. I like to get up and do stuff. It's not about the money. It's always been about the boredom, and I just like to have an eclectic collection of everything going on at all times. But there have been times where I've been. This is my third marriage. Give you an idea. When you get divorced, it really changes a lot of stuff, and you got to change a lot of habits, and um, It's like when people are a drug addict and stuff like that, they go to rehab and stuff. The very first thing they need to do when they get out of rehab is not be where they were, you know, all the patterns that brought them to that bad place, you know, the bad people that they were hanging out with that would make it possible for them to get there, whatever it is that they were getting, or people that their friends that would encourage them to drink because that's who they were, you know, the places that they always went to, which somehow encouraged them to do whatever it is they were doing. You need to break that pattern up, you know. And if you want to recover from a divorce, if you want to recover from the death of someone really close to you, if you want to recover from even just a breakup, you know, it can be horribly painful. I've had a bunch of breakups that were like 4 years, 4 year relationships and shit like that, you know, where that, you know, it just feels like the wind got kicked out of you, you know. And over time, and it's almost like this is my specialty now or something, feels like. Over time, I've learned how to recover from that kind of stuff. And the latest one is when I turned 50 years old, my whole life, one thing I always consistently was able to do was outwork anybody, you know, physical work. I learned how to do several things, lots of things. I was a carpenter. I did every kind of outside work you could think of. As a concrete worker, I did all kinds of stuff. Welder and electrician. And then I went to being a maintenance guy where I did all this stuff because it was like one person with all the skills makes sense. And I didn't care about money. So it wasn't about, you know, having those good jobs. It was about not being bored. That was the number one thing for me. And this latest thing at 50 years old, I was diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis. I've never known, before that, I had never known anybody that had MS. And of course, since then, I've looked into it, and tons of people that I know suddenly got MS. I've been shot at a bunch of times in my life. I used to have a different life. And never been shot, never been hit, which is awesome. But I've been really lucky in my lifetime. I got to the point where I told people that I worked with, hey, if there's ever any shooting, get behind me because bullets don't even like me. But the MS thing was a real showstopper for me because I'd always done things that required a lot of physical work. And, you know, when you have a weak mind, which I kind of always believed that since I was a little kid, never hold kids back in a grade. That fucked me up. I had a teacher in the 4th grade that didn't like me. She actually didn't like me as a person, and I totally understand. I was a huge challenge to all teachers my whole childhood because of my ADHD, which, yeah, it was like letting a bull loose in a china shop. And some of the teachers, you know, reacted well, and some of them didn't. But one of them that didn't was my 4th grade teacher, and she actually was a really mean, vindictive person. And she didn't like kids. It was really obvious. She liked really well-behaved kids, did not like interesting kids. And she told and I was there for the whole thing. I was a witness for the whole thing. So I didn't understand any of it at the time. And I've been analyzing it my entire life since, enough to see what all went down. And she told my parents, who were really, you know, they were both high school graduates and stuff like this, but they had never had any other education besides that. They had raised kids and stuff, but they didn't know, you know, they were really trusting of teachers and principals and things like that because they were an authority that they really relied on. With 5 kids, you know, in the house, you would really rely on that for your peace of mind in a lot of ways. And a teacher recommended that I get held back for the 4th grade, and like meaning having to repeat the 4th grade. And that changed my life, and not in a good way. And it was a great punishment. The that teacher really did a number on me. So, you know, that's what she wanted, though. It was really obvious. It was ultra obvious that that's what she wanted. She showed me. I shouldn't have done the things that I did to her, I guess. I should have been silent. I should have been obedient. All the things that I was never as a child. I should have been all those things. But anyway, that's life. Life, nothing is accident in life. Nothing is a whoops at all. People don't accidentally get hit by a car. People don't accidentally have a meteorite hit them or anything like that. And I'm not talking about God or anything either, because I don't know what that even is. I know there's something. I just don't think that it has anything to do with any books that are written in America, in the world, even that for that matter. I think some religions are probably a lot closer than the one I was raised in, but nothing's accidental. I think it's all set, like a program that somebody wrote and then hit run on. And, anything's possible. That could be just me giving myself comfort, like all religion does. And things. We all set up all kinds of little things for ourselves to give us comfort during times of, trouble. But what I'm going to talk about on this video today is I decided to define what my channel is. And this channel is about reinvention. I was looking at all the things in my life and wondering what kind of things could I give people that would help them, that I specifically am an expert in. I have a lot of knowledge and I have a lot of skills from all my craziness, going from job to job to job, all my whole life, and place to place to place, not just jobs. But one thing stayed true is reinvention. When life kicks you in the gut or in the nuts, whatever you want to call it, a lot of people can fall by the roadside. They just curl up in a ball and lay down and just like, fuck it. I don't care if I die now. I'm done. My fight's gone. But I always, ever since I was a little kid, I saw this cartoon of two buzzards, talking about catching a frog or something like that. Anyway, and then later I saw this poster of one of these buzzards who had a frog in its mouth, and the frog had so the head of the frog's in the buzzard's mouth, and he had his head around. Maybe it wasn't a buzzard, maybe it's a crane. But he had his hands around the crane's neck, and the poster said, "Never give up." And at that moment, I realized, oh, that's me, because in the 4th grade was my first challenge, I think, where that some really huge disruption came to my life. And at 4th grade, you're a child, you don't have any real big plans or anything like that. My plans were nothing more. It never went beyond a Saturday morning cartoon situation or whatever. But I learned from early on, just don't give up. And every time you don't give up, something new comes along that's good. No matter how shitty something has been with my marriages that ended, it was all my fault. Obviously there was 2 people there and stuff like that, but at the same time, I was definitely at fault for my end of it. I didn't know him long. That was the first one got into because I thought I didn't plan on living much longer, because I was going through a bad time in my life. And so I got a job, a really dangerous job that was leaving the country and the whole bit. And I didn't think I was coming back. I thought I was going to be killed. And my girlfriend at the time, who I was just, hanging out with, it was nothing serious to me at all. When I told her, I said, I got this job and I'm going to be leaving. And she was more invested than I was, and she asked me to marry her, and I said, I was thinking to myself, don't be a dick. I still remember to this day, I said, I was thinking to myself, don't be stingy, with my name or something. And I'm like, sure, why not? And I knew that this job had a life insurance policy, which was its main claim to fame. And I said, well, okay, I can put her on it. So the only thing was we got married. It was a JP thing, and a ring that I found, and all that kind of stuff. I've talked about that before on this, and then the job didn't off me, like I thought it was gonna, and came home. And I was married for 7 years, when that marriage ended, I was in a kind of a dark place, like anybody would be during that kind of trauma. And but I was still never hardcore invested in the marriage. At some point, it just became, my life. And when it had to end, which it did, it ran its course. Then I was jonesing for some normalcy, and right around that time, another person wanted to hang out with me, and she checked a couple of quick stupid boxes in my head. One, she was really, really cute, and she was just the funniest person, fun to talk to. She seemed really smart. She was a college student. She was a bit younger than me, but she is the kind of person I didn't think I'd ever be with, and then I was like, wow, I knew the first girl for 2 months, and I knew her, the next girl, for 2 months before I got married, right? And what could go wrong? Turns out she was really, really badly bipolar. Well, that went really, really wrong. And, that marriage ended in 4 years too. And so really threw me off. You make plans. It's a normal thing for people to do. You're heading forward, So anyway, I've been down lots of those roads where I was going down a path and then all of a sudden a grizzly pops out, kind of a thing, Not literally. I've never had that happen, thank God. I probably wouldn't be here. But anyway, I've gone through a bunch of shit over time, and MS was kind of the most recent one. So I'm 57 now, and that was when I was 50 years old. I knew something was wrong when I was about 49, turned 49 or so. So for about a year, I was really struggling with some kind of change, and it did happen that my father died at 50 years old, a surprise death. He went from seeming like a relatively healthy person to a sudden heart attack that was catastrophic. Even though he had as much help as anybody can have for something like a heart attack when he died in 1988, they couldn't bring him back no matter what they did. Now, I know a lot more about that stuff than then because I obsessed about it for a while. What heart attacks were and how to prevent them and how to save people and stuff like that. I ended up being an EMT and all kinds of stuff. But this channel is about recovering from a catastrophic event that 100% changes everything for you. The first response for everybody is to kind of curl up in a ball, fetal position type thing. Weird things. Imagine a child dying, your child dying. That's not like your mom and dad dying. That's not like your grandparents dying. One makes logical sense, that a parent dies. Everybody knows that's going to happen at some point. It just happens earlier for some people than for others. Nobody thinks about something like a child dying. You don't think about divorce, even though everybody seems like they get divorced. But you still, when you get married, you don't think about getting divorced unless you're, I guess, an incredibly smart person that gets a prenup, which my opinion is if you even think about getting a prenup, probably shouldn't get divorced either. But I never even considered getting divorced. The second time, even though I had just gotten divorced the first time, less than a year later before, which is another mistake. But yeah, I got MS suddenly. In about a year's worth of really going downhill, where that I thought I was okay, 50 years old. My dad died at 50 years old. Maybe that's what I'm having. I've got clogged arteries or something. So when I wrapped my head around that and I started going to the doctor for it, took a solid year for them to decide what my problem was. And I was at a pretty good area for medical attention. Had a really good doctor for a general practitioner, and when I first started talking about it, I said something about, as we were talking, but in that first conversation, I said something about, getting an MRI on my head, to see if there's some kind of something going on. And he said, well, there's a lot of things we can check before we do that, And I didn't realize why he had, kind of steered me away from that. But MRIs are incredibly expensive, even to this day. So, and that was, I don't even know. 2018, 2017, something like that. And a year later, they decided that nothing else was. They checked everything, all of my arteries and all that kind of stuff. Did all kinds of different tests, where I had to run and lots of things. And so finally, they figured out that I had. They first thought I had a brain tumor, and they were going to do a biopsy. Drill a hole in my head, put a long needle down there, take a little piece of tissue from the area that they found with an MRI that they thought it was a brain tumor, and getting ready to do that. But then some life things happened, and I had to move from the West Coast back to Iowa, where my mom lived, and where my wife's from. And it just, I mentioned it in a video before, but it just happened to be 5 years since we had moved away. And I had told her at the time, let's go away for 5 years and then we'll come back. Well, it was exactly 5 years. So we moved back and started going to the University of Iowa Hospital, which was like an hour and a half away. It wasn't that convenient, not like the other town I was just in. The good news is, though, they had a team of a couple of world-class neurologists and a team of neurologists that were also learning from them. And they spotted it for what it was and said it was MS. So it wasn't a tumor, it was a lesion. And while all this is going on, I've had to stop working because my physical stuff was changing so much that what originally caught my attention was that I'd run out of breath just going up a flight of stairs, which always been a bit chunky, but I was also one of those guys who could do backflips while I was chunky, and yeah, so that was a first for me. I had to stop working completely. I had a business that was active. I mean, I went from working at a place to finally getting out of that, doing something I knew well and was highly skilled at. I had to go out of that because I didn't want to hold the company up. I felt it was dishonest. I felt it was, not honorable, basically, to tell people, yeah, I can do this job for you. And then it took me forever to do anything, So finally I quit that and I started my own business. And then I even had to quit my own business because with my own business, I could pitch it in the beginning of, I have all these skills, but I can give you a discount because it's going to take me a little longer to do the work, which is, I felt like a pretty good trade for them because I was really good at it and I did really good work and it would just take me longer. And if I was upfront with everybody and stuff like that, I could bid jobs just like that, and make normal money and still be working, with all this weirdness. And I don't know, my second job, I made $10,000 profit. But, shit changed, and so we moved to Iowa and found out that I had MS, not a tumor. And about a year later, COVID started, and I'd already been trying to still fight it, still figure out how to get my way past it. I'd work for like 20, 30 minutes, and I would just start being like I was dead out of shape or something like that. And I would try to push through it because I always had. Every time, no matter what, I always was able to push through it. I was one of those people that could do long distance running, even though you'd look at me, you'd never think I was a long distance runner. And it's because I could push, myself. I could really make myself suffer, I used to call it practicing suffering. And I was good at it. But this had no mercy. And so I would do that, and then pretty soon I would start seeing spots. And then I would start getting dizzy. I was keeping on pushing through it, though. And then I'm not shitting you, this is trippy. One of my eyes shut off, like turn it off like a TV. This eye. I'm like, it just went blank. And I could see out of this eye, and then I'm like, what do you mean? Why can't I see out of that eye, And then within a few minutes, I mean, we're talking about just within a period of like 45 minutes of starting my work, and then it was like, I tried to even push it past that. I'm like, I still got an eye, like some kind of Monty Python skit. You don't run away from me. Got one leg. And then, I had to take a knee or I was going to fall down, and, literally like that. So that was my version of MS, and I didn't know it at the time. That's when I started learning about MS, once I found that out. So during COVID, I started going to college online, and while I was going to college, I started to drive part-time for a city bus company, an MTA. So 6 years later, I graduated college with a master's degree and in business, which is in my opinion, the perfect degree. Everybody ought to have a master's degree in business because everything sprouts from there. And now I'm going to be starting to drive truck for 5 years. It's my 5-year plan, driving truck for Prime as a company driver, probably, just to stack cash. I've got a Fidelity account, which is like a, high yield savings account almost, and 7 or 8% supposedly, depending on, I'm going to go with like moderate risk, right? And then within 5 years, I'll have the money I need to be able to launch my business. And so I might even make money on this channel. You never know. I don't have any. By the way, like and subscribe. That'll help. Hit the bell so you get to see my stuff when it pops out. And if you subscribe, please don't pay any money because that's a thing. You could do that. I don't know if I have that set up, but just subscribe. That way, you always see my stuff. And then like, because I think YouTube likes that. So when people get likes on videos. But anyway, so that's what this channel is about. This channel is about reinventing yourself because I've had to figure it out the hard way over and over and over again, and I'm getting better at it. And there's a bunch of tools to use that I have found that I've gotten. Some of them just plain old gotten lucky on. Some people know that I'm like a voracious reader, and always have been, and that I have ADHD pretty severely. And so I constantly am learning. I'm constantly learning. And now with this kind of stuff, I have something to learn, to focus on, a research project, And so I have a very eclectic base of research. And so I will be imparting that, there's a thing about you're in a hole. Imagine you're in a hole, a deep hole, and you can't get your way out of it. And a friend comes along and you're like, hey, help me out of this hole. And the friend says, I really wish I could help you out, but I can't. See you later, and a preacher comes along, and you're like, hey, I'm down this hole, help me out. And the preacher throws you down some scriptures, and he's like, here you go, man. Pray on it really, really, really hard. You'll get out of there, And then a good friend comes by, and you say, hey, man, could you help me out? And a guy jumps down in the hole with you, and you're like, God damn it. I wanted your help to get out of here. And he goes, well, I've already been down here, and I figured out how to get out of here, and I'll show you the way. Now that's a good friend. And so that's what I want to be to you guys. I've figured out the way out of the hole before. This is not my first rodeo. And I started getting really, really tough times when I was really young. And so I know for sure there's a ton of people out there that are in their teens and in their 20s that are in situations, who knows what it could be. Pregnancy, your girlfriend's pregnant, all those kinds of things. And I'm thankful I never had that one, but I definitely have had things just like that go on. But I can help you out of the hole, because I found my way out many times. Now it's an easy trick to me, and there are tricks. I have a bunch of tools that I'm going to tell you about that I've learned over time, over a lifetime. And I don't want you to have to struggle that much. There's no reason for it. If I already know the way out, I'll tell you, and I'll show you. Hell, I'll walk with you. And so along the way, I'll tell you about these different tools. And the reason I'm going to be good for you is because I've definitely been there over and over and over again. And the difference between me and some other people is that I'm willing to share what I learned from stuff. And a lot of people just have their busy life, the kids, grandkids, whatever. And I don't have that going on. I have a life. I have a plan, as always, and I'm fulfilling it, and so it takes work. But when I'm not working at that, I'll be talking to you guys. So anyway, it's been 30 minutes, so I'm gonna take off. I hope you guys have a great day, and I love every single one of you. And it gets better. No matter what you got going on, it gets better. Follow my channel and look at some of the old stuff I did. Some of the old stuff I did wasn't really about that. It was me just sometimes just venting, and about shit that's going on, who knows what. Me doing the old guy thing, which is like trying to impart wisdom. And all that means is, that I've struggles that I've gone through, and then come out the other side and learn some shit from it. And so I give you the crib notes, and basically trying to help you out. And also it's helping me out too. Helping others is the best way to help yourself. That's one of the tools, by the way. Helping others is the best way to help yourself. Teaching others is the best way to learn shit, in case you don't know that. If you're ever trying to learn something for a class or anything like that, the best thing you can do is try to find the stragglers in your class or whatever, the ones that are having a harder time than you, and then take it upon yourself to teach them what you learned yesterday. The best thing you can do to learn something is to teach it. So that's partly what I'm doing here. The best way to recover from really tough times is to help others. Really. If you've gotten the worst things ever happen to anybody in the world, and I even already mentioned one I can't even picture because I don't have kids, but the best thing you could possibly do to recover is help other people. Volunteer at a food bank where you're serving soup, whatever. Go to the dollar store and buy all the cheap blankets you can buy, and take them to cold people, that are out and outside and homeless and stuff. It does them good in more than one way. It doesn't just make them warm. It makes them feel good inside that somebody actually still gives a shit about them. But it's invaluable to you. There's a ton of more tools, but those are probably some of the biggest ones right there. So anyway, I love you guys. I'm not going to spend any more time, and have a great day, and try to never give up. Just don't ever give up. Never give up. It's always better in the future. always. Whether it's a day or a week down the road, it'll be better. So take it easy and keep on keeping on.